America's Funniest Woman once gave a performance so raw, so unforgettable, it left an entire studio audience in stunned silence. The crew behind the cameras wiped away tears. Critics would later call it television gold. Awards followed. When Carol Burnett walked off that stage, she made a quiet vow she would never watch that episode, not even once. And for 47 years, she kept that promise. The woman who built an empire on laughter couldn't bring herself to face the one moment she let all the humor fall away. No jokes, no voices, just unfiltered truth so honest, it shook the very foundation of everything her show stood for. So what happened in that brief, haunting moment back in 1977 that Carol Burnett never wanted to relive? And why would a woman who spent her life turning sorrow into comedy suddenly create something too real to revisit? The answer goes back long before the spotlight. Long before the laughter to a childhood that could have crushed anyone. Picture this, a 2-year-old girl sitting by a window in San Antonio, Texas, waiting, hoping the next footsteps will belong to someone who loves her. But the footsteps that come are strangers. Strangers in their own home. Her parents were there in body but lost to the bottle. Her father worked when he could, trembling too much to keep a job. Her mother floated through life in a fog of alcohol and resentment, barely acknowledging the little girl who needed her. Both would die from their addictions, leaving behind only emptiness. Carol Burnett's story doesn't begin with applause. It begins with silence, the deafening quiet of a house where love never arrived. And yet, in the middle of that loneliness, something remarkable bloomed. Even as a toddler, Carol found the power of laughter. She learned that making people smile even briefly could lighten the weight of the world. When her parents gave up what little parenting they offered, Carol's unlikely savior appeared, her grandmother Mabel White. She whisked Carol away to Hollywood. But there were no movie deals or fancy homes, just a single crowded room in a rundown boarding house, surrounded by people society forgot. They scraped by on $20 a week, so poor they'd take toilet paper from public restrooms, not out of theft, but out of need. But within those desperate walls, magic stirred. Carol invented a twin sister, Karen. Karen was everything Carol wasn't. Confident, radiant, fearless. So real was Karen that even the grown-ups believed she existed. Carol would race up fire escapes, change clothes, then reappear as Karen Charming. Upbeat, dazzling, this was more than imagination. It was performance. It was survival. It was the beginning of a gift that would one day touch millions. And every Saturday, Carol and her grandmother scraped together 50 cents more than a tenth of their incomes just to sit in the dark and dream. Movie theaters became their escape. The peeling paint of reality disappeared as stars danced, kissed, and sang on the big screen. Then one day, in that cocoon of silver light, Carol heard something that would change her forever. Johnny Weissmuller's legendary Tarzan yell echoed through the theater, and something inside her woke up. Not a laugh, not a smile, a calling. She went home that day, lit up with a strange, unstoppable energy. For weeks she obsessed over perfecting the Tarzan yell, mimicking every note and rhythm with a child's fierce determination. She had no idea that in doing so, she was training her voice, developing the breath control and vocal power that would later captivate millions. To Carol, it was just fun, just noise, just make-believe. But that iconic yell, born in a cramped room of poverty and hope, would one day bring down packed theaters and roars of laughter and applause. What began as a little girl's escape became one of the first weapons in her comedy arsenal. By the time she turned 7, Carol had already learned the most powerful truth of her life. Laughter was a shield against loneliness, against fear, against a world that seemed determined to break her. What she couldn't know then was how heavy that shield would eventually become and how deeply it would be tested. As high school ended, Carol began to dream tentatively, fiercely about the impossible. Journalism. Her mother, once full of creative ambition herself, had always wanted to be a writer. Carol felt a quiet responsibility to finish what her mother never could. UCLA was the dream, but reality quickly crushed it. She didn't have the $50 for tuition. It might have ended there. And for a while, it almost did. But then, fate knocked again. A stranger appeared, someone Carol never met, whose name she never learned, and handed her exactly what she needed. $50, no strings, no explanation. Just a quiet, life-changing gift that opened the first real door. Carol enrolled at UCLA and began studying journalism. But destiny had other ideas. A single elective and intro to theater class changed everything. On that stage, she wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't poor. She wasn't a burden. She was loud. She was hilarious. She was seen at the end of her freshman year. She was named the most promising newcomer in UCLA's entire theater program. It wasn't just an award, it was proof she belonged in this world. But her next break would come not in a theater, but at a party where she was working as an usherette for 65 cents an hour, sneaking hors d'oeuvres into her purse to bring home to her grandmother. That's when she met him. A sharply dressed man, not a producer, but a millionaire shipbuilder from Loyola. He listened as Carol told him her dream of making it to Broadway. Then he shocked her. He offered $1,000 for her, and another $1,000 for her boyfriend, Don Soroyan, but with 3 conditions. Never reveal his name. Use the money only to get to New York. And if they made it, they had to help someone else one day, just as he had. Carol was stunned, but she took the leap. With $2,000 in hand, she and Don packed their things and left UCLA behind. Carol had never traveled farther than Texas. She didn't know anyone in New York. She didn't even know what to expect. But she later said, "I didn't know enough to be scared." Once they arrived, the money began disappearing fast. Reality set in. One night, overwhelmed, Carol sobbed while making a collect call home. Her family begged her to come back. Give up. Be safe. Then, she heard a weather report. Hurricane Carol was heading up the coast. To anyone else, it was a coincidence. To her, it was a sign, a message. Stay the course. She found herself at the rehearsal club, a boarding house for young actresses, chasing big dreams. For $18 a week, Carol got a cot in a shared room with 4 other women, 1 bathroom, 1 closet. And yet to her, it was paradise. Her first big break, something completely absurd. A ridiculous love song about U.S. Secretary of State John Foster. Del is dry, conservative, completely humorless. Carol sang it like an operatic diva, turning it into a comedy gem. Audiences lost it. The bit became her signature. The phone started ringing. She landed spots on the Jack Parr Show and the Ed Sullivan Show. Carol was terrified. Her knees literally shook as she stepped onto the Sullivan stage. But by the end of her set, people were doubled over with laughter, and 5 years to the day after that stranger gave her a second chance. Carol and Don paid back the full $2,000, just like he asked. The mysterious millionaire never resurfaced. No letter, no phone call, no name. He vanished, just as he had appeared, like a guardian angel slipping back into the shadows. But the impact of his gift, it would echo for decades. Carol Burnett's rise was only beginning. She was quietly laying the foundation of something far bigger than success. She was turning pain into performance, wounds into wit, and heartbreak into strength. That rare ability to be both hilarious and deeply human would soon transform her into one of the most beloved stars television has ever known. But she had no way of knowing that the very gift that brought her to the top would also one day bring her to her knees. In show business, success can come like a tidal wave. And for Carol, it hit with the force of history. When the Carol Burnett show premiered, something shifted. Television would never be the same. For 11 straight seasons, it's more than 30 million viewers tuned in each week. They weren't just watching a show, they were part of a ritual. Carol and her cast weren't just actors. They were America's friends, gathered in living rooms from coast to coast. This wasn't just a ratings win, it was a cultural earthquake. But the true breakthrough wasn't just the number sit, was Carol herself. She became the first woman in television history to host her own primetime variety show in a male-dominated industry. She didn't just sneak in through the back door, she kicked it off its hinges. Her genius wasn't just in performance, but in assembling a cast so perfectly tuned, it felt like fate. Harvey Korman, with his classical training and razor-sharp timing, Vicki Lawrence, who began as a teenager and evolved into a comedic powerhouse, and Tim Conway, the wild card, chaotic, brilliant, and completely unpredictable. Tim had one rule: never go full out in rehearsals. He saved his best material for the live tapings, surprising not just the audience but the cast as well. That spontaneity made every show feel fresh and electric. The most legendary moment? The infamous elephant story. In a sketch from their recurring family series, Conway launched into a wildly improvised tale about a circus elephant. The story dragged on, becoming more ridiculous by the second. Carol, Harvey, and Vicki struggled to stay in character, biting their lips and turning away from the camera. Then, a moment of pure comedic genius, Vicki Lawrence broke, delivering a single, unscripted line so brutally funny that even Conway collapsed in laughter. Entire cast broke character. It was chaos. It was real, and it became TV legend. That's what made the show special. It wasn't perfect. It was alive. The accolades poured in: 25 Emmy Awards, multiple Golden Globes. But more than that, Carol changed the DNA of television. Saturday Night Live and every sketch comedy show that followed owe a debt to the path she paved. And yet beneath all the laughter, there was one recurring segment that cut a little deeper. The family sketches. Carol played Eunice Higgins, a woman drowning in disappointment, haunted by the dreams she never lived. Her hair was a mess, her clothes were frumpy, her voice shrill with frustration. The scenes were often hilarious, but not in a glossy sitcom way. There was an aching sadness that hung just beneath the surface. Eunice was a character, but for Carol, she was also a mirror. These sketches walked a razor-thin line between comedy and tragedy. Audiences laughed, but they recognized something painfully familiar in Eunice's outbursts. Her desperation, her loneliness. Carol understood it too well, because she had lived it. And it would all come to a head in one performance she could never bring herself to watch. The character of Eunice Higgins resonated in a way few sitcom roles ever have. She wasn't just a punchline. She was the embodiment of every person who's ever felt overlooked, stuck, or quietly devastated by life. She spoke to anyone who'd ever stared out a window and wondered if their dreams were just childish fantasies, long past their expiration date. But by the show's 10th year, Carol and her team were ready to take a risk. A big one. They decided to push past the safety net of laughs and go somewhere the show had never gone before. They wrote a sketch that would challenge not only the audience but Carol herself. They didn't know it yet, but they were about to create something so searing, so emotionally raw, that it would haunt Carol for the rest of her life. The sketch was titled The Gong Show. It looked at first glance like another offbeat segment from their beloved family series, but it did not this time. In the scene, Eunice enters a low-budget talent competition, convinced that singing on television is finally her ticket to recognition, to worth, to the life she never had. The setup could have been played for laughs. It had all the ingredients of a classic comedy sketch. Delusion, ambition, a cheesy talent show stage, but the writers made a brave and brutal choice. No slapstick, no exaggerated gestures, no escape through humor, just a woman, desperate, vulnerable, painfully human, reaching for one last shot at meaning. Carol stepped onto that stage as Eunice. The audience, expecting laughter, got something else entirely. As the scene unfolded, could feel the tension in the air shift. The crowd that had come to laugh fell silent. This wasn't comedy. It was emotional surgery, and Carol Burnett was wide open. Eunice sang. Not well, but with everything she had, could hear the desperation trembling in her voice. This wasn't a character anymore. Was Carol, bearing decades of pain in front of millions. Then came the judges' response, led by real-life game show host Alan Ludden. playing himself, didn't offer gentle rejection or humorous critique. They mocked her. Her voice, her clothes, her dreams, they laughed the way the world always laughs at people like Ununice. And the camera stayed on her face. It didn't flinch. It captured the precise moment the light went out in Ununice's eyes. The slow crumbling of belief, the final heartbreak of someone who had clung to hope her whole life only to realize, too late, that she'd been the only one who believed in it. Then, in a move no one expected, the lights dimmed, the music stopped, the camera pulled back, and left Ununice alone. Alone on a cheap stage, tears streaming silently down her face. No applause, no punchline, no redemption, just the sound of her sobbing raw exposed. And completely shattered. The audience didn't know what to do. Some stared. In stunned silence, others cried. The laughter they had come for never arrived. Even the crew stood frozen, beneath blinking back tears of their own. But no one was more affected than Carol. When the cameras stopped rolling, she didn't linger. She walked straight off the stage, and with quiet resolve, made a vow. She would never watch that performance. Not once, not ever, and for 47 years, she kept that promise. Later, when asked about it, Carol finally explained why. It felt too real, she said softly. Ununice's devastation felt like my own because in many ways, it was her. Carol Burnett didn't just play Ununice Higgins, she was her. A girl who grew up poor, a young woman with impossible dreams, someone who had been laughed at, overlooked, dismissed. She knew what it felt like to want something so badly you'd risk everything, your pride, your heart, your dignity, just for a chance. So when Ununice stood on that stage and was mocked into silence, it wasn't just acting, it was memory. That 7-minute sketch didn't just show Ununice breaking. It showed Carol breaking in every way she had been broken across her lifetime. And while critics raved calling the performance groundbreaking, revolutionary, even a moment that proved television could be high art, Carol couldn't see any of that. All she could see was herself, her own heartbreak, magnified on screen, broadcasting color to millions of strangers who had no idea they were watching someone bleed behind a mask. For 47 years, that episode has sat like a locked box in Carol's mind. Always there, always waiting. But she's never opened it. She can't, because in a career defined by laughter, that sketch was the one thing too real to laugh at. And maybe that's the highest measure of her artistry sometimes. The greatest performances are the ones that break us in the making. The irony isn't lost on anyone who knows her story. Carol Burnett survived an unthinkable childhood. She endured abandonment, addiction, disappointment. She turned trauma into timing, grief into gags. She turned every scar into a punchline. But she could never face 7 minutes of her own truth, because that 7 minutes cut deeper than any joke could soften. And even as she avoided that one performance, life kept testing her. Her daughter Carrie Day began battling addiction at just 13. The same demons Carol had watched destroy her own parents. Carol fought for her, not with softness, but with strength. She believed in tough love, the kind of love that risks being hated if it means saving a life. Carrie got clean. She and Carol grew closer than ever. They worked together. They wrote together. They planned a Broadway play about Carol's childhood called Hollywood Arms. But life again proved cruel. Carrie died at just 38 from pneumonia brought on by lung cancer. Carol was shattered, but she finished the play anyway. She said she owed it to her daughter. The pattern repeated. Her youngest daughter, Erin, faced addiction as well. Again, Carol stood up. At 87 years old, she took custody of her grandson, Dylan, becoming the anchor for yet another generation, just like her grandmother had once been for her. The girl, who started life unwanted, unheard, and forgotten, had become the heart of a family and a legend to the world now. At 91 years old, Carol Burnett is still working, still performing, still making people laugh. She's appeared in Better Call Saul, Palm Royale, and other recent projects, reminding everyone that talent doesn't age. But behind the sparkle, Behind the grin, behind the legendary Tarzan yell, is a woman who once turned pain into performance so perfectly that it became too much to bear, and in that truth, thrall silent. And unwatchable lies the brilliance of Carol Burnett. Even now, with 7 decades of brilliance behind her, that one episode remains untouchable. It sits quietly in the archives, a sealed vault of emotion, a piece of her soul she gave away on live television and could never quite reclaim. It aired only once. But that was enough. It changed television forever. In just 7 minutes, Carol Burnett proved that comedy could carry. The weight of drama, that laughter and heartbreak weren't opposites, but siblings. That audiences didn't just crave escape, they craved truth. The sketch shattered the boundaries of what variety television could be. It became a blueprint for shows that dared to blend humor with pain, laughter with reality. The Golden Girls, Scrubs, Fleabag, BoJack Horseman. Better things, they all owe a debt to what Carol did that night. But while the world gained something profound, Carol paid the price. Over the years, in rare interviews, she has described the sketch as necessary but devastating. She's proud of it, she believes it mattered. But she also admits some truths are too heavy to live through twice. She's performed on Broadway, headlined sold-out theaters, and starred in iconic roles across every platform imaginable. She's won Emmys, Golden Globes, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and entire shelf of lifetime achievement. She made the world laugh. But that 7-8 performance, that's the one piece of her legacy she cannot revisit. And maybe that's exactly what makes it so powerful. Maybe some art is meant to push even its own creator past the point of comfort. Maybe the fact that Carol Burnett can't watch it is the clearest proof of how real it truly was. 47 years later, that sketch continues to ripple through the industry, quietly guiding writers, performers, and creators who understand that sometimes the most unforgettable moments come when the laughter finally stops. For Carol, it remains a locked room in her memory, a door she closed and never reopened. And maybe, just maybe, that's the final lesson in her extraordinary story. Sometimes, the greatest art demands pieces of ourselves we never get back. Sometimes, making the world laugh means confronting a truth too heavy to carry alone. And sometimes the most powerful performance is the one you can never bear to watch again.